It is October 1st, 2025. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. I'm Nate Eaton. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you watching. Hope you are having a great day. We are here in a new month, final quarter for the year. I can't believe it. It feels like fall, at least in Idaho Falls, and I'm excited. I'm excited that fall's here. Today, we officially opened our nominations for Secret Santa. If you're unfamiliar with that, every year an anonymous person here in Eastern Idaho gives our team $1 million to give out to people in the community in need. People who have all sorts of needs, from furniture to gas cards to their bills paid, people who truly have a need. And so for the next few months, our team has the incredibly lucky fortune of being able to dress up in as Santa's elves. When I say dress up, I mean put on Santa hats. That's about the extent of our dressing up. But we're getting ready for Secret Santa season, and I say all this because I cannot believe that the time of year is here. And we'll start posting those videos November 1st. So if you know of anybody in Eastern Idaho that has a true need, please let us know. Go to eastidahonews.com, and you can nominate those people there. Well, that's not what we're talking about tonight. As I mentioned, it is October 1st. Today, by the way, would love to know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, it's always fun to see where you all are watching from. Today is a somber day for many, as it is the anniversary of the biggest mass shooting in modern-day American history. Back in 2017, on October 1st, there was a shooting in Las Vegas at the Route 91 Music Festival. This was a country music festival. You may remember it well. And there were thousands and thousands of people gathered listening to Jason Aldean sing when a shooter opened fire on them from the Mandalay Bay. It was horrific. And today I have a captain here who responded to that scene, who has just released a book. The name of the book is The Courage to Live: What Fear Taught Me About Courage, Leadership, and Coming Back to Life. He was there that night. He was actually at a training with his colleagues when the shooting happened. And he responded along with every other officer in Las Vegas to a horror show. And it was just awful. And I spoke with him a few days ago. We had a great conversation. I really look forward to reading his book. Before I get to that, though, let me get you caught up on exactly what happened. Sadly, these things become too common that we might forget different facts about the shootings. But this happened on October 1st on the Las Vegas Strip. 60 people were killed, more than 850 wounded. 850 wounded. Deadliest mass shooting in modern American history. The suspect, Stephen Paddock, 64 years old. He fired more than 1,000 rounds from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the hotel. He was an auditor and a businessman living in Mesquite, in a retirement community in Mesquite, which is I believe about an hour away from Las Vegas. He has no kids. He was divorced twice and had a longtime girlfriend. Son of a bank robber. I didn't know this, but his father was a bank robber and on the FBI's most wanted list in 1969 and 1977. He was a high-stake gambler. He earned comp rooms from the hotel, meals, things like that. So he was obviously familiar with Vegas. They were familiar with him. And his game of choice was video poker. He kept to himself, according to many people that know him, and was a heavy drinker. So police now know that he arrived at the Mandalay Bay on September 25th. He booked room 32135, 32nd floor, room 135, and it was a comp room. So he had enough credit or enough comps to get the room for free. 4 days later, he checked into the room next door, which was 32134. They were connecting rooms. He spent most of his time over those 4 or 5 days gambling, according to surveillance footage, and the Mandalay Bay was, of course, able to review his activity. He interacted with employees more than 10 times, twice on the day of the shooting, and all interactions were, quote, normal, according to the employees. He brought in multiple suitcases, which we now know contained the weapons. On September 25th, he wheeled up 5 suitcases. On the 26th, 7. On the 28th, 2. On the 30th, 6. On October 1st, 2. So that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, plus 6, 20, 22 suitcases wheeled up into those rooms. And he put on the do not disturb signs on the door on September 30th, so the day before the shootings. Police found after the shooting 24 firearms in the rooms, large amounts of ammunition, high capacity magazines. All of this took place on the last day of the festival between 10:05 and 10:15ish. And Jason Aldean, as I said, was on the stage. There have been some documentaries released about this. There's one, I think, called 11 Minutes or something on Hulu. I could be way off. I remember seeing it a few years ago, and it was riveting. It was just, you were brought right there into the scene. They spoke with many of the victims. They played 911 calls, showed Jason Aldean on stage when this happened. I believe one of the band members had their baby with a babysitter on the same floor in the room right across from the suspect. And the whole time they're thinking, please don't let anything happen to the baby. It was a, you know what, I'm going to look up the name of that right now because I thought it was very well done. And it was released a few years ago. Let me see if I have it here. 11 Minutes. It's called 11 Minutes. Documentary series about the people impacted and heroes of the Vegas mass shooting. Jason Aldean gives his only interview on the suspect. Looks like it's on Apple TV and maybe Paramount Plus too. You can watch it there. Maybe on YouTube too. But it's a pretty good docuseries. 36 women were killed that night. 22 men died of gunshot wounds. The oldest victim was 67. The youngest was 20. A few years later, a 57-year-old woman died who was paralyzed in the shooting. She had survived the actual shooting, lived for 2 years, and then passed away from being paralyzed. Also, a 49-year-old died of complications of a leg wound from that night. And then the 61st victim died of suicide after the shooting. So a real heavy subject, a real tragic subject, obviously, but one that Captain Josh Bitsko felt the need to write about as he's processed his trauma over the years and has come through it. He has retired from the police department, and he now does trainings across the country with law enforcement. He speaks at events, and he's got a really interesting perspective on all of this, obviously responding to this mass shooting. The name of the book, again, The Courage to Live, What Fear Taught Me About Courage, Leadership, and Getting Back to Life. Here is my interview with Josh Bitsko. Well, Josh, thank you very much for chatting with me today. I want to start with kind of your law enforcement background. Have you always been interested in being a police officer?
Yeah, so I wanted to be a cop since as young as as early as I could remember, like 2 or 3 years old. My dad was a police officer for 30 years in Las Vegas. And I even remember like he was a sergeant at the academy and I was like a little kid and I remember running through the hallways wearing his hat and had his old nightstick because this was, obviously early 80s and like it's all I ever wanted to do.
Nice. So that's what you did. And were you always an officer there in Vegas?
Yeah, I started my career at 18 in Las Vegas, and then I just my entire career was here. I was an officer, a sergeant, lieutenant, ended up being a captain. I was a captain over the Las Vegas Strip. Had a couple of other different jobs as a captain as well.
I imagine you see quite a bit of unique circumstances, I guess you could say, working on the strip.
Oh yeah, I mean they call it Sin City for a reason. You have just a lot of tourists, people from all over the world, mix in a little bit of alcohol, and you definitely see a lot for sure.
So take me back to that horrible day in October. Were you were on the clock, right, working when the shooting happened?
Yeah, so I was a canine sergeant at the time. So I ran our training program for the canine section here in Vegas. And we were training dogs about 6 or 7, a 6 or 7 minute drive away. And I hear over my radio automatic gunfire. So I looked down at my radio to see what channel it was coming from. and saw it was on the strip. So in K9, you work all over the valley. You don't really have a set area. And I knew immediately there's an active shooter because that if it were to be, anything with fully automatic gunfire on the strip, you're not really going to have like gang shootings or anything like that. My mind went straight to active shooter.
Did you think maybe that uh, uh I guess I don't know if it was like a false call or maybe that you know how sometimes people will call 911 and they think it's a firework or they think it's something else. Did you think in your mind that maybe this isn't as serious as it sounds, or did you know that this is going to be bad?
No, I knew immediately just because I know the sound of automatic gunfire. That's what I heard. So an officer was keying their mic and I was hearing the gunfire coming over the
Oh,
radio.
you were actually hearing the gunfire.
Yes.
You didn't see hear a report of it. You actually heard the gunfire.
Yeah, so you had this country concert, the Route 91 festival, you have 51 officers working overtime at the festival. So when the shooting starts, they get on the radio to report the shooting to get more officers. And when they key the mic, the automatic gunfire comes over the radio, and that's what I heard.
So you're at training. What do you do?
So, well, a lot of my squad was dressed down because, a lot of times you don't train dogs in uniform to bite because that's a bad habit, right?
Yeah.
Uh, And so, but I had one other officer that was in uniform. So I grabbed him and I'm like, let's go. And the rest of my team, I'm like, get dressed and meet us there because I didn't want, them driving, trying to put on gear and their vests and all that or show up without it on something like this. And so I hop in the car and just take off to try and get there. And so I was like I said, about 5, 6 minutes away, rolling code, lights and sirens to get there. While I'm driving, I call the SWAT commander. It's his second week as a SWAT commander.
Mm.
And I think this is one of his first major call outs, but we have a big SWAT team, a very professional SWAT team. And I'm like, hey, there's an active shooter at the Route 91 festival across from Mandalay Bay. Just hang up. I just knew it was real. I knew the quicker we get resources, the quicker we can bring this to resolution, quicker we can get medical to the people that are hurt. Because I was also hearing reports from officers of multiple people shot, multiple people down. And I mean, this was real. I've been a cop at this point for 17 years, and I never experienced anything like this. So, that internal like that anxiety trying to get there fast, those emotions in me while I'm driving, it's just, I know we need to get there, and I'm trying to get my head around it because what a lot of people don't know is in the very beginning, there's that chaos of where is the shooting coming from. You have, in Las Vegas, there's big buildings, so the sound of gunfire is echoing off of other areas around there. The gunshots are really loud. The microphone was open on stage, so then you have gunshots coming through the speakers at the stage. There's that confusion for the people there, and
Hmm.
just complete and utter chaos. So we're trying to even just get my mind around what am I going to do when I get there? Because initially I'm driving to the concert grounds, not the Mandalay Bay, which is across the street to the west.
Because you didn't know where the shooter was.
Not for the first several minutes, it's just trying to figure that out. And you had officers getting on the radio trying to get people help, trying to get people out, trying to get okay, eventually an officer gets on the radio. It's coming from the Mandalay Bay. So, we need officers to go there. So that's where we changed to go to the Mandalay Bay.
So how do you even know where to start when you get there? Is there someone that suddenly becomes the commander of the crime scene, or are you just helping out where you can? What's the order in deciding what happens next?
So that's a good question. One that I've been talking about this for 8 years, and I talk about the command and control of it. Our command post for the incident was inside the concert grounds. So especially for responding officers, there wasn't a lot of direction. I was a sergeant, so I was a supervisor at the time. I knew what we needed to do. Like there's two priorities when it comes to an active shooter: stopping the suspect and getting medical. Everything else that happens, the investigation, all that, yeah, you need a lot of command and coordination. Um, those things need to happen, but you'll go down in history of having a successful response to an active shooter if those two things happen fast, stopping the suspect and getting medical. So we knew what we needed to do. When I'm driving with Dave Newton was the other K9 handler that was with me. As we're getting there, we go to Mandalay Bay because that's where now people are responding. We know where the shooting's coming from. an officer was shot responding in front of the Mandalay Bay. So we decided to go into the Shark Reef. Mandalay Bay has a Shark Reef on the south side, convention space, and then the casino floor and the hotel tower. So we knew we could make entry through the Shark Reef to make our way to the suspect if we went in there. I
Do you,
called. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you remember when you realized, or your team, all the officers there realized, okay, it's coming from the Mandalay Bay up on the top level? I mean, did you see the window that had been shot out or the window that was open?
No, so the way because we came in from I got off on Russell, and so we came in from the south and northbound. We had officers reporting where it was coming from. Now I could hear the gunfire when I was arriving, but as far as like I couldn't see it, but I knew because we have coordination, we have officers giving us intel, saying what they're seeing on the radio. I'm not going to say that I was lucky, but I was close enough to have an impact, but I had enough distance to get my mind around it. You have officers that were there at a country concert shaking hands and people thanking them for being there to taking sustained gunfire for 11 minutes. I mean, that switch was automatic for them. These overtime events, especially like concerts like that, they're pretty easy. I mean, you walk around, maybe you have to deal with a couple fights, deal with some drunk people. That's about it. And
Yeah.
I'd worked 100 of those in my career. To go from that to automatic gunfire, the worst call of their life, without any like time to get your mind around it. So I was, I'll say lucky to have a little bit of time to be able to get there, be able to have an impact, but at the same time, kind of just as I'm driving, trying to do some crisis rehearsal. Like this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel like. I know what I need to do while I'm getting there.
Mm. With so many people too that are down there, and I don't know if many of us realize just how long this shooting was. Sometimes these happen in, less than a minute or a couple of seconds, but this was longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, 11 minutes of st sustained automatic gunfire. You had a suspect who had 23 weapons affixed with bump stocks that replicate automatic gunfire. And that and there's so many videos out there online and shows and documentaries, but I think sometimes what's lost when we picture these things is, I mean, we can kind of be empathetic to the fear people were feeling, but that chaos that you don't know it felt like Las Vegas was under a coordinated attack. I mean, you have people dropping gunfire that just doesn't seem natural. Now, the investigation and everything showed it was one suspect on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. I was in the room and saw it with my own eyes, but it's just the amount of gunfire, the dramatic nature of what happened. It has a severe impact on even just trying to get your head around what's happening.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember, weren't there other calls coming in where they thought there was gunfire at other parts of the strip, but it was the echo or false reports too. So there originally wasn't the thought that there might be more than the one scene.
Well, yeah, so what happened is you have 22,000 people at this concert, right? You have 413 people shot or hit with, frag. You have over 800 injuries. 58 people died that night. Two have died since they're injured from their injuries. So just the magnitude of that. Well, you have 22,000 people, all these people injured. They evacuate on their own. They all like run and they go into other properties around the strip and the airport, which butted up to the concert grounds, and MGM and Caesars in New York, New York, and they come in, many of them bleeding, reporting active shooters. So what do all those properties do is they call in active shooters on the radio. So, I mean, they call 911, report an active
Right.
shooter, which then comes over the radio to me. So as I'm arriving, I'm hearing an active shooter in New York, New York, active shooter at McCarran at the time airport. And so internally, like that's 2017, I'm thinking Las Vegas is under attack by ISIS. Like that is my mindset is, this is not a lone shooter. You think about how we train for active shooters. What are most active shooter incidents around the country? It's a a lone gunman walking through a crowded area, a mall, a school, a festival, shooting until officers get there and stop them.
Hmm.
And so this one sounded different, right? It was a more of a barricaded sniper, but using automatic gunfire into a crowd. So it was different enough that our tactics had to adjust. But at the same time, you still have that same, it's just so much chaos.
Mm, yeah. So walk us through when you went into the Mandalay Bay, the steps you all took to try to get up to that 32nd floor to get that suspect detained or at least, yeah, to stop.
So I arrive at the Shark Reef. I have one canine officer with me. I had called on the radio, say, hey, I need more officers to meet me at the Shark Reef. You had a couple officers that were at the festival grounds that had ran across the street and went up to the suspects, like the floor, the 32nd floor. You think about the Mandalay Bay, you have a center area with elevators, and then you have three wings going off of, a couple hundred yards each. So you had officers at the elevator bank and could see down the hallway of the suspect's door. So, we wanted to go up and, get to them, give them support, potentially make entry. I get three detectives that are dressed like in a polo shirt, a vest, pistols. And we're a large agency. We have 6,000 employees, 3,600 commissioned officers here in Vegas. So I mean, I knew their faces, but not people that I like trained with or knew.
Yeah.
But what I knew about them is they were ready to go. They showed up to have an impact. And so we make entry into the Shark Reef, we gear up, and our K9 team works with our SWAT team. So and I, been on hundreds of missions with them before this. And so I had the SWAT gear, the heavy vest, helmet, all that, a rifle. And so we make entry through the Shark Reef, go all the way through all the convention space, get to the casino floor. And it's odd because there's a mix of, they create these casinos so you don't know what's going on outside. There's still people gambling and drinking. It was almost surreal. I think what I was expecting is to show up and have waves of people running at me and yelling and screaming, but really it wasn't that.
Because people
Um,
didn't even know, right?
yeah, they didn't know the horror and the chaos that was happening right outside.
Yeah.
And so we make our way to the casino floor. I give up one of my detectives. I grab a security officer, grab the detective, and I'm like, hey, you guys, I need you to go to surveillance and get me intel. Because again, now we don't know if the suspect around this time stopped shooting. So we don't know if the suspect had got out, if these other calls are the same suspect. Because I don't, having never experienced something like this before, I didn't understand the ghost calls that I would be hearing on the radio.
Hmm.
So we I send that detective. I remember that detective's partner asking me like, "Okay, cool, I'll go with him," because he didn't want, his buddy to go by himself. And I did a quick count. That left me with um, two detectives, a canine officer, and myself. And I remember thinking, "Oh no, he has to go by himself." And I had that thought at that time as a sergeant, as a leader, like, I hope that guy doesn't die.
Mm, man. So what do you do from there?
So we make our way to the elevator banks. We know we have to get up at this point to the 32nd floor. I have another team that shows up, another vice sergeant and a group of officers. We meet at the elevator bank, and now again you have these false reports. There's a report that the security was in a shootout on the 29th floor that came over the radio, and then I knew we had officers on the 32nd floor, so we come up with a quick plan. I talked to that other sergeant. I'm like, you guys go give them support on the 32nd floor. I'm gonna take my team. We'll go to the 29th floor. We'll deal with that shooting that's happening, and then we'll make our way up and help you guys out. That was not a factual report. There was a security officer that was, up on the floor that had come down to the 29th floor. And so that just by the time they let their dispatch know, let our dispatch know, let me, it was security was in the shootout. So I go to the 29th floor. We don't find the shooting there, and I make my way up to the 32nd floor.
So
And yeah, go
Josh,
ahead.
can I pause you for a minute? I just want to know what's going through your mind. I mean, are you just rushed up on adrenaline or are you calm? I mean, what do you remember what you were thinking? And had you ever been in a scenario like that before?
Absolutely not. Now, for me, there was it was a mix of emotions, and it's something that I talk about because I get to now I travel the country and I teach first responders and leaders about navigating emotion and navigating fear and anxiety and what I call tactical paralysis, that feeling that you want to freeze. Everyone knows fight or flight, but there's fight or flight or freeze. And I was a mix of those things. Like I was a mix of there's that fear, right? I haven't ever experienced anything like this. Now I've been a canine officer for a long time, and in canine you go on all the hot calls all the time, so you get a little bit of that stress inoculation. You're just repeatedly in those situations. But this was so far beyond anything that I'd been on. So there's that fear. There's also an anxiety is I need to get there fast. People are dying,
Hmm.
right? We need to get medical down to the people on the field because we have to be able to clear this room out so we can get medical and get people out that are injured because I knew there were a lot of casualties at this point, just based on what I was hearing on the radio. So
Yeah.
there was that anxiety, and there's also this internal feeling is because I was a sergeant, I was a leader. I didn't want to, I knew I was sending people into danger, including myself. I didn't want to make the wrong decision and get people killed.
Yeah.
I, I knew that I was going to have to send people in a room. I was going to go in a room. There were going to be obstacles placed in our way, but I didn't want to make the wrong decision and then people die and have that on my shoulders. And
Right.
so there was that anxiety that was, and I, like I mentioned, sending that detective there by himself, that was the first really heavy decision that I had on this call where it's I knew I needed enough to handle the room I was going to, but I wanted intel that's very valuable, and those decisions they weigh on you and they stick with you after too.
Hmm. So you get up to the 32nd floor. Walk us through what happens next.
So I'm in a stairwell because the elevators we'd shut down because we were trying to contain the size. It's easier to contain a couple stairwells than it is all the elevators, service elevators, that and stairwells. And I'm trying to get out onto the 32nd floor. I'm a little concerned about like a blue on blue situation where everybody's up here and I just pop out in the hallway and they see a gun and so
Right.
I'm trying to communicate on the radio, hey, we're coming out on the 32nd floor. Here's where we're at. And finally, I can't get on the radio because you have such chaos going down below still. Um, so we end up opening the door, and that's where I come face to face with Levi Hancock, who is a SWAT officer who I'd been to SWAT school with and been on hundreds of missions with. And we he had gone to the 32nd floor because when I called the SWAT commander, he did the all call. He was out and about, was able to get there fast and have because generally you don't have SWAT on these things. Like most active shooters, it's going to be patrol detectives, maybe canine that are the quickest to respond. But he was out and about and heard the call. So we basically run into each other, he's coming towards me, I'm going towards him. And I remember both of us, I was just like, was able to take a breath because, I knew what his capabilities were. He knew what mine were. And he's like, hey, I saw the suspect's door. We're going to go down to the 31st floor. We're going to traverse the hallway, come up the stairwell, and we'll have access to the suspect's door. So
Mm-hmm.
how I mentioned you had the elevators and the long hallways. So he was in 32, 135, which was a suite. So at the end of the hallway, there's double doors that are facing the rest of the hallway. And then to the left of that door is a fire escape stairwell, a door leading into the hallway. So we would be able to step out in the hallway and be right there at his door. And then directly across from us was 32, 134. So he had rented out both rooms.
Right.
And they were adjoining rooms. So we go down the hallway, up the stairwell to make our way into that hallway, where we encounter he had taken a metal L bracket, and screwed that door shut. So he was trying to funnel us down that hallway.
Mm.
Because prior to this, when the shooting began, there was a security officer doing checks on an open door in that same hallway, unrelated to his what he was doing. And he had seen through cameras that he had set up, and I'll talk about that in a minute, that he was in the hallway. So he had shot through that door dozens and dozens of times at this point.
Yeah.
So, that obviously he wanted to funnel us down that hallway so he would have a clear shot at us, responding officers when we got there. And like I said, the suspect had stopped shooting at this point. So now we don't know, is he waiting in the room for us? Does he know we're here? So he's, taking up a position to open fire when we make entry. So he had barricaded that door shut with the L bracket. Well, Levi was a breacher and had all the tools also in SWAT. I mean, he did every job in SWAT, but he had all the tools to be able to overcome that. So he had a little pry bar. We pried off the L bracket, opened the door into the hallway. And when I look into the hallway, you see the double doors that he had shot through, dozens of times. You have debris on the ground. You have where bullets struck around, the area. And then directly across in front of room 132, 134, there was a room service cart. The room service cart was draped with linen, and then there were wires going from that room service cart into the suspect's room. So, coupled with hearing on the radio all these other calls, all the chaos that was down below, the amount of gunfire, we see that. And what are we thinking? That that's an explosive device, an IED, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a decision to make. I have a decision to make. I can run down all the way down to the casino, through the casino floor, through the convention space, grab my bomb dog, which also takes me out of being a tactical element. So I carried two dogs. I had a patrol dog and a bomb dog at the time. So I can go get my bomb dog, but then I'm no longer, my bomb dog wouldn't bite anybody. So he wouldn't be a good tool to have for the tactical part, but I could run him on the room service card, maybe see if there's an explosive there. But that would take 30 minutes,
Yeah.
getting all the way there, back up, running him, and I knew people down below we needed to get medical.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know is Clark County Fire had, aside from policies and training, had moved forward to get people help, to give medical, give first aid, get people out, in spite of not having us cleared the room.
Yeah.
So, I could call for a bomb squad, which would take a long time. And on top of that, will they operate in the hallway where the suspect had already shot through the door dozens of times? Like there were so many factors. So we had a decision to make. Okay, what are we going to do about this? And our decision was we're going to breach the door and just hope that this doesn't explode.
Mm. This guy,
Obviously, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say this guy was very elaborate in how he did this. As you mentioned, there were cameras. He had the two rooms. Wasn't there ammunition and guns in both rooms?
Yeah, so he had weapons in both rooms. He had preloaded magazines staged around the room. He had cameras set up to see down the hallway, to see our approach. Like he had taken months and months to plan. And that's one of the things I talk about when I train cops about how important it is to be able to navigate the difficult emotions is we have to respond to somebody that has spent months of planning and we have to make decisions in seconds,
Mm,
which is why it's so important to not go into that fog of war, to not allow the stress and the fear and the anxiety to make those decisions for you. We have to be able to make the clearest decisions based on our training because we have to react to months of planning that someone has done. And with the internet, he was able to research police tactics, LVMPD, SWAT tactics, and all of that. He had an idea of what we were going to do.
hmm
He had to react to what we were experiencing in that moment.
So what was on the cart? What were the wires going out to the cart?
So, well, we step out into the hallway because, we made that decision like, okay, we're going to just breach the door as normal. If this cart explodes, then, it'll clear a way for the next team to make entry into the room. And again, I talk about those difficult decisions. It's like, is this the right decision for me to make? Am I going to go down in history getting my entire team killed, including myself, because I didn't wait for a bomb dog? I didn't wait for more resources. But I know I wasn't. I know Levi wasn't. The team, we weren't willing to wait. So we step out into the hallway. Dave uses a ballistic shield to cover the door while Levi hangs a explosive breach on the door. I cover the secondary door with my rifle, and as I get close, I see that on the cart there's a camera taped to a plate facing down the hallway.
Mm,
So that's what the wires were. Now, even seeing that, I wasn't like, okay, this isn't a bomb.
right, right.
But so I cover the second door and I actually reach down and I flip the camera over so it's not on us. And I'll tell you, like when I did that, I was like, oh, please don't explode. Like
hmm
flip it over. We hang the breach. We step back into the landing at the top of the stairwell and we call down to the command post that had just been set up, the SWAT, Tactical Operations Center. And like, hey, we have a breach on, we're going to breach this door. We'll let you guys know what happens. So from the little alcove we call the breach, hit the plunger and have a positive breach. So the door comes down. Now we're expecting to be met with gunfire. The breach goes off, the fire alarm goes off. I can smell the remnants of the explosives from the breach. I can still smell gunpowder heavy in the air. Um, we when we breach the door, we're not met with gunfire. Levi and I lean out into the hallway to see if we can see into the room. I see a AR platform rifle on a bipod with a scope on it next to the door down the hallway. And I always say when I'm teaching classes, this was where I had the dumbest thought of the entire like night for me. I remember seeing that gun inside and go, "Oh, we have the right room," because it wasn't the bullet holes, it wasn't the cart, it wasn't all of that. It was just in my head.
Seeing the gun. Yeah.
Yeah, you never want to serve a warrant or do anything on the wrong room, right?
Right.
So I always kind of, chuckle about that. And that was the thought that I had in that moment. So now a lot of times you'll do a breach and go, but here we wanted to breach and see if we were met with gunfire, met with, if we had any kind of reaction from the suspect.
And was
So
he in there?
so he was. So we step out into the hallway. I cover the second door, the 134, as we make entry. We go in to start clearing out the room. I'm stepping over guns. There's, shell casings on the ground. And we find the suspect deceased with a self-inflicted gunshot wound on the ground near one of the windows. There
Yeah.
was a small little table next to him with a piece of paper that had like bullet drop, windage, like all of that on it, handwritten on it. So, you could tell this person had a working knowledge of guns and ballistics and all of that. So we finished clearing out the room. We do a secondary explosive breach. So he was in two rooms, and since he broke out two windows from the Mandalay Bay to shoot down into the crowd, it blew that connecting door shut. So we did another explosive breach into that secondary room. We went in there and cleared it out. Again, we find guns and all of that. He had screens set up that went to the cameras in the hallway so he could see our approach. And I'll tell you, for us, obviously it was safer for us to go into a room where the suspect had taken his own life, but there was also that lack of closure. Like we're going, like I'm not saying that, we ever want to kill somebody, but we want to go in and we want to be the ones to take them out. And there was that just kind of feeling of like, okay. And at this point, once we get done clearing the room out, we're starting to realize these other calls coming in are what they are, these echo calls, ghost calls, whatever you want to call them, because, the command post is now sending officers to these other locations and realizing it was just victims from the original scene showing up at these other places.
Yeah.
And, then it's like, well, I grab my team after I find checks with the suspect's girlfriend's name on it. We report it down. We find the suspect's ID, report that down to the command post because we're trying to do intel gathering. Who is this person? Is there multiple suspects? Is trying to figure all of that out. And then I grab my team and we go down to get ready to go to the next call. Like, okay, what's these other calls? We're going to go to them. By the time I get down to the bottom floor of the Mandalay Bay, we realize that all of those are fizzling out.
Hmm.
And I make my way to the command post where I spend the next 12 hours managing different strike teams at properties on the strip because Las Vegas took a black eye that day and we needed to show people that we were there as a police department and we were going to keep people safe.
Oh my gosh, Josh, talk about a riveting account. Why did you decide to write a book about it? And was it therapeutic in a way to relive it, to talk about it? To tell me about that process.
Yeah, so since then, I retired from Las Vegas Metro in February of 24. My wife and I, we started a company where I go around and I teach police departments and leaders and first responders. And what I had realized, so through the course of my career, I mean, this was obviously the largest scale and most difficult event that I had ever been involved in. And for a long time, I was just really numb about like the trauma. Like I didn't get into therapy. I didn't want to talk about any of the difficult emotions that I felt. I just tried to push it all down. And through that process of doing that, the problem with that is it works for a while. But in numbing the bad, I also numbed the good. And I kind of just went through life as a zombie. And so I had experiences later in my career where I was able to, like, I was a captain over our wellness bureau and get in touch with that part of policing and the healing, which was good for me to heal as well. But through that, realizing that there is a gap in how we prepare our officers. Now, there are conversations about police wellness and mental health, and those conversations are real and are happening. But what we don't talk about is how do you mitigate the fear in the moment? How do you mitigate anxiety or push past that willingness to free or that natural instinct to freeze in situations like this? And it's something there's a real stigma there in law enforcement to talk about. I was afraid.
Hmm.
I grew up watching those 90s action movies like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon where the police officer, you're not supposed to feel fear. You walk away from explosions in slow motion. Like those, that's
Right.
and culture creates reality. And so we never talk about, oh, I was really scared on that call, or I had a lot of anxiety that I was going to make the wrong decision. And so I worked with mental health professionals, police researchers in developing this class where, okay, when you feel fear in the moment, which is natural, we're humans and we have these emotions, we've evolved or we're created with these difficult emotions to protect us. But then we ask first responders to ignore those emotions, but we don't give them the tools to mitigate the physiological effects of fear, physiological effects of anxiety, to clear up that mental bandwidth to make the right decisions. So in this class that I teach, it's okay, you're going to feel these emotions, whether it's in life, in business, in family, as a first responder. Here's how you mitigate the effects so you can make the best decision possible. And then I get into the resilience side and how to not numb it like I did, because I had in a very short time in my career, I had this one October shooting. I had 6 weeks later was involved in an officer involved shooting with our SWAT team, where my dog was biting a suspect. He put a gun to me. I end up fighting over the gun, and another SWAT officer kills the suspect. And
Mm-hmm.
I lost a brother to suicide, lost a father to cancer. And through all of that, like I said, I didn't process or deal with any of those hard things. So through my experiences and stories and through the research and data-driven techniques, developed this class. And in the process of teaching the class, realizing that there's more people than I can stand in front of that can get this message. So, the book is called The Courage to Live. And it was important for me not only to tell that story among others in the book, like talk about the officer involved shooting. I was the incident commander at the active shooter at UNLV in December of 23, right before I retired. And so again, be able to tell these stories, but also talk about the impact that they had on me, the impact they had on others, and how to then have the courage to live again and not, be numb and not go through life as a zombie. And so in the book, I talk about the tactics that I've taught first responders, but for normal people, when you're faced with stress, when you're faced with, you know, for example, you want to go start a business and you have to leave a job that has that security to it. Like those are hard decisions to make, and you're going to be faced with that fear and the anxiety and the uncertainty. So how do you do that? And I have a couple methods to navigate that, to regulate emotions, to have a blueprint to the chaos, and then the feeling of being overwhelmed and how to process after, and then how to evolve into a stronger person afterwards. So the book itself, it's not for just for first responders, it's for anybody that has has to make difficult decisions and feel, we feel fear, and then there's shame tied with fear, like, oh, I shouldn't be afraid right now, but that's natural. And then how to move on past that.
Yeah, which is most of us, all of us. I mean, we'll all have something traumatic in our lives, unfortunately. Hopefully not as big as what you've gone through, but it's nice that you're using your experience to help others, not just in law enforcement, but all of us. What is it like for you now when you go down to the strip and you drive by or walk by the Mandalay Bay? I mean, does it all come flooding back to you? Do you try to avoid it? How do you process things today?
So it's funny, it's been a experience, because so later in my career after this, I was the captain over the strip, and I was responsible for all the police operations that happened there. And so about a year after after the shooting, I went to a concert at the Mandalay Bay, and I wasn't really expecting, much, because I hadn't started my own mental health journey. I was still shoving everything down, and as I walk into the Mandalay Bay, my heart rate just spikes. Like
Mm,
I feel like my heart's in my throat.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's something I've never experienced before. And So then I would start avoiding it and avoid the strip. And then it got to a point in my career, like I have to, I'm the captain over the strip now. And so does it bring back memories? Yes. Will I say that I'm stronger now because I went to therapy and I started working on myself and tried different techniques like EMDR and all of that? Yeah. So it doesn't mean I still feel the emotions when I go down there, but they don't impact me as much because I put in the work. But it took me years to get there.
Mm. Josh, where can people get the book? And I imagine others might want to reach out to you or touch base with you. What's a way that people can, contact you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. There's joshuabitsko.com for keynote speaking. There's information on the book there. You can get the book on Amazon. It releases on October 1st. And so it's called The Courage to Live. If you get in and search that or search my name, it'll come up. And I also do keynote speaking, so I don't just speak to first responders. So through that website, you can also there's a way to contact me. I mean, I have all of my information there so people can reach out. And I also have a podcast wherever you can find podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple or any of that. It's also called The Courage to Live, and you can find that through those too, where I talk about the book and links. I'll have the link on the website to purchase the book on Amazon, and I'll also have the link, in the description of the podcast.
Great. Josh, thank you very much. Nice talking with you. Is there anything you want to add?
I'll just say that it doesn't have to be you going to the or being part of the deadliest mass shooting in history to have to deal with trauma and to have to deal with, these hard decisions that we have to make in life. So remember that you you can work on yourself. You can have your own mental health journey, and there's no such thing as, well, your trauma is worse than mine. We all go through it. We all experience it. I'll tell you, losing my brother, losing my dad had as much, if not more, of an impact, and that's something that everybody has to deal with: loss and grief and death. And so you don't have to go through as much to need help. And there's nothing like finding a professional to sit down and process through your emotions and develop tools for yourself. The last thing I do add is during this 1 October shooting, a lot of first responders acted very brave and did a lot of brave things, but so many lives were saved by normal citizens that stepped up to do the right thing under immense personal risk. You had concert goers using bike racks as stretchers to get injured people out while gunfire is happening. You had off-duty nurses and doctors and military personnel that were providing aid and helping people. So if you look at any kind of critical incident, any kind of response, you can find those people that are stepping up and being brave. And so mitigating fear and navigating fear is not just for first responders, it's for everybody.
Yeah. Josh, thank you. All the best and look forward to reading your book.
Of course, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Josh, should we decide October 1st would be a good day to release this?
I think so,
Okay,
or especially in your guys in Idaho, like here in Vegas, there's so many events going on October 1st that sometimes it's better to do it in a couple days before. But I think from where you're at on the release date of the book and on the anniversary, I think it'd be a good time to release it and a good story.
great. Yeah, we'll plan to do that. I'll definitely send you the link and we'll link to your website as well and a place where people can get the book. And thank you for making time. Thank you for your service. What a career and what a journey, man.
Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, I talk about fear a lot. I retired a little bit early. I did 24 years, and so now I run a business and trying to support a family on a business that is a small business where it's, feast or famine can get.
Right.
There's a lot of stress and anxiety there too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving me this platform and helping me out with it too.
I just have to thank Josh for chatting with me, being so open and candid about his experience, his ordeal, and dealing with this as these tragedies unfold. So often we try to move on as quick as we can, and think that everything's okay, but obviously he said it's not, and you have to deal with it. And again, the name of the book is called The Courage to Live: What Fear Taught Me About Courage, Leadership, and Getting Back to Life. We want to thank newspapers.com. If you want to read more about the massacre there in Las Vegas. Newspapers.com has articles about it from different newspapers. You can go and check it out. You can also read about other interesting things through history, other massacres that have happened throughout history. It's a morbid topic, but for many an interesting topic. And they have more than that. They have everything, over 1 billion newspaper pages from hundreds, thousands of newspapers around the world. Newspapers.com is the place you can go to learn history, learn your family history, and thank you to those of you that have been sending me stories about what you found on newspapers.com. If you go on there, you can get a 7-day free trial and experience it, and we thank them for sponsoring Courtroom Insider here so that we can bring you these programs. And we're going to be bringing you a lot more through the month of October. We have some exciting ones planned over the month, and we'll continue to bring you true crime updates and court hearings and as much as we can. And also, if you have some cases you want me to look into, or cases that have maybe been solved but still are fascinating to talk about, maybe you know guests that might be willing to come on, or maybe you yourself, if you're a victim of a horrible crime who has survived, or you know someone, reach out to me, because I'd love to consider all of these. We have the glory of the internet is we have unlimited time and we have unlimited space, so we can talk about these things and bring them to our worldwide audience. Here's how you can contact me. Here's where you can find me. Nate Eaton Reporter is my Facebook page. I'm also on X and Instagram and YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed, would love if you did so here on eastidahonews.com so that you can get alerted every time we go live. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back with more Courtroom Insider this month, hopefully tomorrow, which is Thursday. Working on lining up an interview for tomorrow morning. If it happens, we'll be here tomorrow night. Either way, we'll try to bring you at least one more show this week. I just have to thank you for watching. Thank you again to our guest tonight for his book. One more time, I'll give you the name. It is called The Courage to Live. Josh Bitsko. Thank you for your service, and to all the other police officers and law enforcement who do so much to help all of us. Have a good night, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton. Take care.